macaroni things in the microwave.
She's just our tire.
But forgot to add water to the fill line. I'm like, oh my god, Lorraine, you are so smart. How can you be so smart and yet
I heard that from
dingy little things like
like
this?
teenagers often, and they
Oh.
have water.
She's
Do you bought today? What is this?
What's
this?
Like, oh my god.
With a sticker?
The whole house is
You got a
burning up.
sticker today?
He wants to cook.
Did you vote?
Daddy, they
He did.
And I was like, oh, you don't need that. Let's just start.
Right, because the inside of those things are lined with
so cute.
almost like a metallic-y on the inside of those packages.
Listen.
You want to tell him?
Oh.
That's okay.
We walked by your house the other day.
You made it. I'm shocked.
Oh my gosh, I forgot.
Look who I got. Who's this? Who's that?
I mean, do I need to go print out that building inspector memo that I sent? Did you guys print that? I will send it. I'm gonna go
Is
there.
it James?
I'm gonna go print
Can
it.
you say hi? Yeah. Went down. Oh, there's one over there. Alright. He's gonna fall down. Here, sit down so you don't fall.
No, they sit down.
Good job. You're doing so good. Oh, you're such a sweet girl. Are you with anybody? You're so cute. Just snuggle. You snuggle? You want to go? You want down? Okay, come here. You want to go see your mama? Come on. It looks like it needs a top. It looks good. I like that. Looks really good. Looks kind of weird though, but these are darker than the center. That's a little strange. Mhm. That's your bunny?
This is Peter from the Woods. That's really bad. That's so rich.
You just got this bird on.
This is called Latina. This one is darker. It's just so huge. That's
No, I think you're just touching it.
that's mine. It's actually dark.
That's okay.
I don't know. You want it back? Alright, keep it in your mouth.
It's that's in the kitchen. That's my piece. That's the original.
It's
Mine's
shiny.
darker than it.
Do you want to come play some games? Do you want to come color?
Yep.
Yeah, let's
It must be this though.
Yeah, this
It's
is.
right now, it's 7. I don't know.
Driving it to not.
So we're just gonna leave that off again, and we will just record it and live stream the audio for it. And then I'll have to just uninstall and reinstall it.
Okay, it's 6:33, we'll call the meeting to order. For the roll call, Councilperson Holhouse. Here. Councilperson Bendel. Here. Councilperson Baskin. Councilperson Blight. Here. Stand to the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Then moved and second to approve the consent agenda, we will vote. Councilperson Blight.
Yes.
Councilperson Bendel.
Yes.
Councilperson Baskin.
Yes.
Councilperson Holhouse.
Yes.
Okay, so the old business for consider resignation for Melissa's, this was, her resignation was given January 24th, her last day was February 7th. We did not motion to reflect that anywhere in our minutes, and the bank would like to have that in our minutes reflected so that we can change signatures when that happens, so that's why this is on the agenda for tonight.
Motion to accept resignation of Melissa Holthouse.
Been moved and second to accept the resignation from Melissa Holhouse. We will vote. Councilperson Baskin.
Yes.
Councilperson Holhouse.
Yes.
Councilperson Light.
Yes.
Councilperson Bendel.
Yes.
New business. Consider resignation from Jerry Michael as a building inspector.
And this is resignation retirement. You guys all saw his letter that came in, so we also need to have a resignation approved so that when we are ready to appoint, we appoint someone new.
Second.
Moved and second to accept his resignation letter. Go vote. Councilperson Holhouse.
Yes.
Councilperson Bendel.
Yes.
Councilperson Baskin.
Yes.
Councilperson Light.
Yes.
Discussion of building inspector position.
Okay, so I have tried to put together a memo just to reflect some of the possibilities. So with the retirement of Jerry Michael, obviously you all know, I think he started doing inspections in 1997. So the building inspector position is a part-time position. He had been doing inspections since 1997. The fee structure, how he was paid, was 70% of a building permit cost. And then for any other items not covered under building permits, he was paid $24 per hour, which would include dangerous building complaints, work without a permit, etc. So anything that was not a building permit, or I'm pretty sure like he did fences, but he doesn't do the drive, you know, all that stuff. So that is our current state. Also, in addition, our planning and zoning ordinances are also from 1997 and have not been updated since. I don't know that our permit fee schedule has been updated since then. It looks about that old, I'm not sure. So whoever and however we move forward, the work of updating those items, obviously we're going to do the process with planning and zoning ordinances. Will also go through ECOG, but there's a lot of legwork that will happen with that would likely be the work of a building inspector alongside the city engineer. So there would be a lot of pre-work that needs to be done, maps, etc. So I've kind of brainstormed some options. I've reached out to the ClerkNet, which is our state of Iowa clerks forum that we have, asked what other cities are doing for building inspectors. So I have a couple options that I want to just lay out for you guys that I've researched before you start your discussion. So the first one, the city of Urbana can contract with a local contractor. So a building contractor, anyone who is a licensed contractor, those types of things is an option here for the city of Urbana as well. Chris Ward, who is at the city of Vinton, and tonight Police Chief Paxton also reached out to me. So the city of Vinton has a 20, would be interested if the city of Urbana would like to do a 28E agreement, which would be a shared service between cities. So that's an option. The city though of Vinton, their person is a code enforcement officer. So that position is actually employed by Vinton PD. So they do the code enforcement and building inspections. And I found out that the licensure, because there's not necessarily licensure for building inspectors in Iowa, they don't have to go get a certification. It all goes through is it called internal code? Hold on. It is called International Code Council. So, for example, that is what certification the city of Vinton would hold because he's a code enforcement officer. So he does all code enforcement, which would include nuisance abatements, anything that has to do with the code of ordinances for the city of Vinton. That's why it's also an officer position. He is also a member of the Iowa Association of Building Officials, which would be something that maybe a contractor would do in addition to their current licenses for this position. But the state of Iowa does not have certification. He said, I'll reach back out to them, and that's when Police Chief Paxton called me back and said that's correct. They do not have something for the state of Iowa. He got his certifications through International Code Council. So that option is available. And then of course I linked the City of Vinton's website there so that you can see what else that particular position holds. The City of Center Point has a 28E agreement and they do their building inspections through Lynn County. I did contact Benton County. They do not have such a position in Benton County where there is a building inspector for the county. So that is actually not an option for us. City of Fairfax, a little bit similar to our size. They have a full-time building inspector that they have hired on their own. That particular building inspector has been in that position since 2016. They also have a 28E agreement with Palo. However, that has, and within their agreement at Fairfax, he deals with all the planning and zoning issues that they have. That Fairfax building inspector tracks all of his time and mileage, and he's paid monthly, and he's paid $40.97 an hour. The 28E agreement with Palo, they no longer contract anything other than building permits because Fairfax stays completely busy, I guess, with building permits alone. So that 28E agreement, they said, has become a little more minimal. City of Mitchellville contracts with V&K Engineering for inspection. So all the permits go through City Hall, then they're emailed to V&K. V&K receives 80% of the permit fees, and the city keeps the 20%. Any issues that come up through planning and zoning is handled through the engineer. Our city engineer's office is not currently picking up that type of service. There's so many people that stay busy outside of dealing with building permits. So those are the options that I have found. So in the interim, I had building permits coming in to the office. So I did reach out to a local contractor to ask if we could work with that person in the interim. And it is Doug Labs. And Doug has been a contractor for 20 years, 25 years at least. He's local here to Center Point, Urbana. And I reached out to him because we have actually third home permit came in today, plus we have a driveway. And I understand that we'll think about these things. He is very qualified. He is also willing to, take a certification if there is one. But he was willing to go ahead and do the permit basis with me right now until there's discussion from the council. So I am just keeping the same with him, which is the 70% that Jerry was getting. And I wanted to clarify something because I went back and looked at how we were billing and charging and working with Jerry. So for example, I think previously at council meetings I was under the understanding, and I wonder if maybe some of you could have been under the same understanding. So like when a new housing permit comes in, the total for like a single family residential home is $2,525. So that would include the housing permit for single family, and it goes by, I sent you the guys the fee structure, but it goes by square footage of the home. So that's like $425. The water connection is $950, the sewer connection is $950, and then if it's a new home construction, there's a $200 administrative fee or construction permit fee. So that's how we get to $2,525. Initially in my mind, when I was seeing that Jerry was getting the 70% previously, when I looked at those, I thought it was 70% of the total cost of the permit, which was the $2,525. It is not. It's 70% of just the $425, which is the housing permit. So right now, I just want to be very clear to you that in the interim, I believe that this falls under something that I was able to do as city administrator to contract with Doug. Actually, we don't even have a contract, he just stopped in today to let me know, because we didn't want to hold up these 3 homes that are ready to break ground this week. And I think 70% of 425 is $297. So, do you guys know? I should have done that figure before 425. Yes, $297.50. So just so you guys know, I needed to move forward on these because we were already delaying construction on 2 of these. So that's where we're at in terms of keeping the office going and needing to have someone that could take on the building permits.
So if the city decides to hire our own building inspector, can we have that building inspector do the code enforcement, or do they have to prepare?
Yeah, so right now, code enforcement is done through mayor, council, and my office. So properties are, like, if I think about nuisance abatement, that's the first thing that I think about in terms of code enforcement, just because we had so much of that example this summer. Property is identified as a nuisance property. That could be a complaint from a neighbor, that could be from a council member, a mayor, it could be anybody that lives in town that makes a complaint about a property. That then typically from the roadside or however, there is typically a picture taken of the nuisance. So if it's vegetation, whatever it is, a picture is taken. We do that because previously in the past, I was told that people would call in and say, that's actually not true, I don't have, 6-foot weeds alongside my house. This way, there is a picture, we have it, and we're able to show them. It goes right along with the letter. It goes also right along with the code of ordinance, and it's highlighted what they're in violation of. Within the letter, depending on what it is, it's 30 days, whatever. So all of that enforcement is currently happening through this office. Previously, Vinton between their city administrator, he said, and Chief Paxton. They were trying to do it, and there's just too much. So their particular person is hired through the police department for code enforcement. I do not know the international code that, because he just called me tonight about that. I had not heard about that. I'm guessing that that could be more on the code side, like officer type side, than it is on the building inspector side, but I could be wrong. I can do more research on that. Again, he didn't call me back until later this afternoon, so I haven't had.
Our codes on building inspection and nuisance property are all civil, so I
Right.
wouldn't think that they'd have to be a sworn officer to enforce that civil law.
I don't think so, because we're not, I'm not, and I'm the one producing the letter upon either the council or the mayor. So he just said, yeah, he's a member of the Iowa Association of Building Officials in addition to Certified International Code Council. I need to do some more research on that to see if that's something that you would want the person to have. But he said, no, like, state of Iowa does not have a certification like that. But when you have a contractor, for example, that has all of their certification licenses up to date, all electrical is already done through the state of Iowa, so none of those permits come through our office. Everything for electrical goes through
State farm.
state, yep.
I guess I would like to see us pursue us having our own building inspector. I'm not really interested in 28E with Vinton or anybody else. I'd rather us see if we can put something together and get it, if maybe it's, Doug's interested in the long term, but we could at least formulate a requisite for a job and post it and all of that.
I was gonna say, I would post it, and I would definitely like to see our, get our own. The 2080, I know it can get confusing when you're going back and forth.
Well, the other thing I know with like 2080 agreements, I think Fairfax kind of figured that out too. You're at the mercy of someone else in another town, which also then pulls up contractors. And I found out in the last 24 hours that involves a lot of people, and they get upset when something like that is held up. I mean, we've been trying our best, so it's worked out okay. But I mean, I would like to work with our city engineer, they just don't have the capacity, nor are they interested in that. So from my standpoint, which I don't have that, I do see the benefits of a local contractor or someone that's local to our area that would be committed to doing this part-time, simply because it, especially during the spring, summer, and fall, it becomes busy.
Yeah, I would definitely like to get somebody in here, I don't want to hold anybody up for, especially.
Yeah, I see there was a hole sort of today or yesterday, I think, down at Charlotte Vista, so.
It should be Endeavor.
It's on.
Oh, Endeavor, that's right.
Endeavor, yeah. Yes, so they were able to dig just for water sewer connection to find where that was, but they didn't get their permit until this afternoon. And I texted it to her, so she's picking it up tomorrow.
So are we, I think we should have some type of contract with Doug, right? Do we have
Yeah,
some-
I think so. I think what we will need to do is, I think that he should be appointed as at least an interim until we advertise or whatever we do. And the interim, if he's appointed, we can do that simply through the resolution and state like his, if we do the 70% per permit and then the hourly rate, like his hourly rate is $40 per hour, but we wouldn't have him doing the work of planning and zoning until he's been approved for, to be, if that's who we choose. So the work right now in the interim should just be a permit basis, and we can put that in a resolution where you appoint him. And then if you would like me to put together a job description, what am I putting together a building inspector job description?
Yeah, I would think it would be.
Because we
that
don't
and
have
then
one of those
posting.
currently either.
And then a posting, right?
Yeah, we'd have to have.
Yeah, and then, I mean, we can't necessarily, I mean, I'm assuming when you're talking with Doug, in the interim, that would go on
Yeah, I wanna make sure that we appoint him as an interim so that he's covered under the city insurance. As long as he is appointed in the interim, or we can motion. Actually, since we don't have a resolution tonight, I believe that if you guys are okay moving forward with him in the interim, you can, I think, motion for him at his rate, just so it's reflected in the minutes, is what the insurance company said. That way we don't have to wait until the March 12th meeting, because like I said, I have 3 right now, and I hate to bring you guys in for another special meeting
So-
just for those.
He's getting 70%.
So, yeah, so right now, if he does 70% of the permit, which would be keeping with where we were with Jerry, I think we could agree to that in the interim. I'll put together a job description.
You said he's getting $40 an hour.
Yeah, I don't know, like, unless we were to ask him to do something that would fall under that $40 an hour, you can go ahead and put that in there,
That
but
would be
we were,
something outside the permits though.
yeah. Well, I guess maybe we should put that in there, because one of them would be like dangerous building, okay? Nobody foresaw that, one of our buildings would fall down when we had a rainstorm, and that did happen, so, I don't know. I don't know that we need to do that,
Yeah, I guess I would motion to appoint Doug Lapps as interim building inspector at the 70% rate of permit fees.
Right.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and second to, have Doug Labs as an interim as a building inspector. We will vote. Councilperson Baskey,
Yes.
Councilperson Light,
Yes.
Councilperson Holhouse,
Yes.
Councilperson Bendel.
Yes.
Okay, so in the interim, I'm going to put together a building inspector job description and add. Do you want me to do one that has something in there with like code enforcement, or like with our code of ordinances, which would include nuisance abatement, and list some of those types of things, and at least put it in there? I don't know that, like you said, I don't know that they have to have that, because the person's not going to be hired under a police department umbrella, but
Because he's not enforcing criminal law.
no.
Everything that's in our code for, under the building part, or, what we discussed is all civil.
You could say potential to, you know, you have potentially asked to enforce codes.
Nature permit, yeah, your license for that.
I wouldn't make that
Yeah, I don't really think that it needs to be it maybe would be one of those additional skills or something like that, but I don't think it needs to be the main piece of our building inspector. Any other requirements that you would require? Active, license for construction, like, I think they have to have up-to-date licenses. All building, you know, like building contractors have to have up-to-date licenses.
Yeah,
for the
they
state
need to be
bylaws.
licensed or bonded or something there, so.
So I would assume we would want up-to-date licenses,
Insurance.
insurance. And, I did call our insurance company, so once someone is appointed, as long as they're an appointed employee, they are covered then under the city insurance, so.
That position, is that supposed to be appointed by the mayor, though? That did we check on that? Or is it still promotion selection? The mayor's duty to do that.
So like there's the chapters, it refers to building inspector, but we don't have a chapter that just says building inspector, like we do for mayor, council member, city administrator. I don't think we have one that says building inspector, and Jerry said if we find it, let him know, cause he hasn't seen one since he started.
Well,
So, and I did look, but yeah.
Is it under the mayor at all?
as I said, that's.
Well, it's referenced throughout our code, says building inspector, but we have nothing then that references back to like the job and responsibility of a building inspector.
So what you're saying is you think that I should appoint them to council groups then?
No, I'm just curious if that was how it was supposed to be. So I'm looking here at the mayor's. The mayor points, it does not say building inspectors. I think we're sufficient.
Yeah, okay. Okay, we're going to budget work session then?
Yep, and if you guys think of something else that you think I've forgotten, I will try and get this put together and sent out to you. How long would you guys like to advertise that once we,
I'd say at least a couple weeks now.
We did a month for Melissa's replacement position.
Are you gonna bring that back? Are you bring that back to council first to approve the description and posting? And then,
Right.
okay,
Yeah, we would bring.
for the next meeting.
so March 12th? Yeah. But when we do that, or, so you just wanna discuss how long we're gonna do it then?
Well, I just want to make sure.
We can take a look at it. Looking around March 12th.
Okay, so. Are we ready to move on to the next item? Okay, so I do have a very brief before we get started with the budget, work session items that I have for you. I do have, a brief, I think it's behind your agenda, a brief presentation. Again, just wanting to reiterate, as city administrator, that it's my responsibility to coordinate the preparation of the city's budget, monitor spending throughout the year. This is our 6th meeting. So this would be like, is this our 4th budget meeting or our 5th budget meeting? Because our first one was November. So during this time, I've tried to share with you data, work with you on critically evaluating service delivery strategies, and provide some analysis of previous expenditures that are completed to determine whether we need to continue, eliminate, or improve different services. So the item that we have left is police services. So I did find in the clerk handbook, the Iowa Supreme Court ruled that a city has an obligation to make arrangements for its own police services. The manner in which the police services are to be provided to a city's residents is left to the judgment of city council. Cities may establish and maintain their own police departments or contract the police protection through the county sheriff's department, a nearby city police department, or a joint law enforcement district. The city of Urbana needs to look at these critically and evaluate the delivery of our policing services. So I wanted to just provide a synopsis of the data that's included in here, which was also shared in the November meeting. So currently, the city of Urbana has a combination of both. So we have an Urbana Police Department, and we also contract with Benton County for policing services. If you look back to the data provided in fiscal year 24, so I came on in November of 2023, so that was fiscal year 24, the police department budget was $291,000 in expenditures, and our special revenue expenses were $44,500. That would be health insurance, FICA, IFRS, unemployment, work comp, for a total of $335,600 for a police budget. In fiscal year 25, $184,100 plus the special expenses, which are health insurance, FICA, IFRS, unemployment, work comp, $41,600 for a total of $225,700. I want to present to you, I actually have 5 options, but for example, when we get to fiscal year option number 4 that I will share with you, policing services with Urbana PD, I've outlined having 1 police chief plus Benton County for services, includes expenses of $172,822, plus $34,275 for the health insurance, FICA, IFRS, unemployment, work comp, for a total of $207,097. That leaves our property tax levy at 14.32654 with large expenses. That property tax levy is the current property tax levy that the city has had since FY '24 and '25. I'm going to provide another fiscal year option 2. This option is policing services with Benton County Sheriff plus minimal expenses of about $79,000, which would take our property tax levy to 13.80540. This is a significant impact on property taxes in the state of Iowa right now, which would be 0.52114 that would go back to our property tax owners. I think that it's important for us to take a look at that tonight, and I've provided 5 options with also including the data that I shared with you previously in November. That data included a full year of the police department data. In that, I shared with you, taking out any calls that were on I-380, that more than 45% of our calls for service were on I-380. The total calls for the city of Urbana were 785 calls, and on average, the city was using 360 hours per month for our PD officers in Urbana. That working 12 months out of the year is 4,320 hours worked per year. In addition to contracting the remaining services, since we are not a 24/7 with Benton County. If you take the 785 calls divided by 4,320 hours worked, you get 0.182 calls per hour. If you look at the police data, I shared an exhibit that outlines that in an Excel spreadsheet and shared that on the next slide. Other additional information and data that was shared with you to analyze was all the other Benton County towns and cities that are contracting with Benton County. I included their town, population, and the amount of hours contracted per week. You can see those outlined below. The additional data that I shared were towns similar to size to Urbana that were in Lynn County in the hours that they were contracted per week. That included Center Point, Fairfax, and Palo. So the 4 options, which actually became 5 here before the meeting because I was doing an additional option for you. And if you have questions, I'll do my very best to try and answer those. So before I move on to sharing these property tax and how it impacts the property tax levy, do you have additional questions regarding the data that's been provided previously and shared with you tonight?
The calls on 380, was that just traffic stops? Those were just,
It could be anything for call for service. So a call for service could include assistance, it could include speeding, it could be
crashing,
anything, yes.
so we eliminated the 624 that were on that.
Anything that was on I-380. And that was last January when the discussion was brought to all of you previously. And Mayor Benson had said, we should have, if we're going to pay for law enforcement, then they should be working in town, not I-380. Is that what you would reiterate to the conversation last January?
Yes.
Okay. Other questions about the data that was presented?
Just, the option 4, you had police servicing with 1 for Van PD, 1 chief, and Van County shifts. Was that at the new rate for that?
That is a good question. Let me look.
I'm guessing that wasn't.
Did you say option 4 or option?
Option 4, because the 1432-654, that was before we knew that they were gonna double their I assume that was that.
which will not impact, that particular piece does not impact, that's one of the expenses that we talked about, so.
Got it.
So I just want to reiterate, that I think we had a really good discussion, but remember last year with legislation, the state of Iowa did the ratcheting down, trying to get all cities, towns across the state to the 810 levy. When doing that formula, it took many of the things that cities could levy property taxes for off the table completely. So for the city of Urbana, our items that we can levy are actually the liability and property insurance, the FICA IPERS, all from general fund, as well as the property liability from general fund, and other employee benefits that are paid out of the general fund, as well as the debt service levy. So there are 4 pieces of our expenditures that are going to impact the property tax levy, which is where I wanted to demonstrate behind your presentation. I actually plugged in the numbers that go right into the DOM so that I can show you how each one of these scenarios will directly impact the property tax levy. Again, I do want to reiterate, Maggie doesn't want to see the property tax levy drop at all because next fiscal year we will have different things with the water storage tank project. However, I do understand for families and property tax owners, even if you only get some relief for 1 year, however that's going to work, it could be worth it. So that's why I wanted to provide as many scenarios as I could. I also reached out to the Iowa League of Cities, and if we were to go with one of these property tax options, he said it's nearly unheard of for a city to drop their property tax the 0.52, like 50 cents. Especially right now when the new money coming in is only $27,000 for the city of Urbana. So I do want you to keep those in mind as well as we go through the options. So if you look at option number 1, and I've tried to highlight for you those items. So the first thing I want to share, I included a new spreadsheet in your packet. I took this last year, so fiscal year 25. I took the insurance, all of the property and liability insurance for the city of Urbana is about $99,000, approximately. If you break that down into each of our departments in general fund, we have police, streets, library, parks, and city hall, all out of general fund. Then obviously water, sewer have the biggest property liability insurance because of the 2 plant sites, but those dollars for that liability and property are paid directly out of those enterprise accounts. So the ones that we're looking at that are for the property tax levy, that impact the levy, would be police, streets, library, parks, city hall. So if you take a look at option 1, option 1 is going to say, if we decide we have 0 police for the property and the liability, that would be $14,675. Then it was asked that we take out the $22,000, so each employee to have full health benefits for a full-time employee is $22,000 for health insurance and employee benefits. So in the same example, you guys asked if I would take out the city administrator's insurance. So I am provided full health care benefits, which is $22,000, similar to all the other full-time employees. However, I currently do not take the health insurance benefit. So that $22,000, if we take $22,000 out of, if you look at line 14 takes away the $14,675, which is our property and liability. The next line that says 30 next to it, line 30, it says $35,364. If we take out police and take out the city administrator, that would fall under all the health, not health. The $35,364 is FICA IPERS. Yeah. So obviously, that includes my FICA and IPERS, but it takes away police. If you look at the other benefits on line 31, this would take away all the health and other benefits, which is health insurance, unemployment, work comp for police, and then takes away only the $22,000 for health insurance for the city administrator. Option 1 then takes our current property tax levy is 14.32654. It would take the property tax levy to 13.55391.
When you say, no property liability for police, does that also include, health insurance?
Two separate lines.
I know, but it's not called out in there, so. is that-
Oh, right, so that's the zero police means zero property liability and zero health insurance work comp. That would be a zero for the police in all of those
I
areas,
understand.
okay? And then the zero for city administrator, the INS is just the health insurance, which is the 22,000. If you guys just want a motion or signal to me, I'll go to the next option if you're,
Now, on those though, with the city administrator, the 22,000, we take that out. Life-changing events though, we still require.
correct.
Feed that to you, correct?
Correct, so if an employee, in this instance, it happens to be myself, if I have a life-changing event, which could be anything that falls under a healthcare life-changing event, and we need to come up with the 22,000, because as an employee, I am offered those benefits, that would come from the general fund, and then that would also mean that we didn't levy those dollars, meaning that it would come from the general fund reserve then. Good question. Option 2?
Can I,
Yes.
and maybe this is my own ignorance, when we're talking property and police, that's a shared building, so,
Yes. So, this is where this gets tricky. So, all the property type items that are covered within that building are under emergency right now, which is something that the fire currently pays for. So, this 14,675 is any other liability insurance and property that is outside of this building, which makes 0 sense, but that means like whether we have 1 police officer or we have 11 police officers, we're going to pay the same amount for the liability. Now, the other piece of that, what this takes out though, is automobile insurance, because that is separate. So for our automobiles to be covered, so that's in the 14,000. For 3 automobiles, for the 3 that we have, I should say, it's $8,750 each year to renew our 3 vehicles for
How much?
insurance, $8,750. Now, these, I had this, and then today, I just got the potential increase for FY '26, which will likely, he thinks, take this number to 105,000. Right now it's 99,000, so there may be a few adjustments there that we will make, but those numbers just came in. He left a message for me today. Option 2. So option 2 would be line item 14, taking out the 14,675 for police. Line 30 would be taking out FICA IPers for police, but leaving in, obviously city administrator. Other employee benefits, this would be taking out police, but putting back in the full 22,000 for the city administrator. That then changes the property tax levy to 13.80540. Does that make sense how the numbers change there? So obviously, when you put my insurance back in, it kicks it back up to 13.80540. Option 3,
Yep, okay.
okay. Option 3, Amanda, are you guys ready for option 3? Okay. Option 3 is the zero policing, so taking out the property insurance liability, then taking out FICA IPers for police. Then on employee benefits, it would be taking out police, health, work comp, all of those, but putting back in $11,000 toward the city administrator, so that if there were a life event, there would at least be half of that we wouldn't have to take from the general fund. That takes the property tax levy to 13.69363. Option four leaves police in there for property liability, leaves that the same, leaves the FICA IPers the same, includes police, and then leaves the city administrator the same. That leaves us with the property tax the same as it's been in the previous 2 years for FY24, FY25, which is 14.32654. So that would basically keep things the same. However, you would still have a decision on a few of those specific expenditures, for example, that could be still in there, depending on how that would look. Are you going to keep the one police? Everything that's the same.
Because that was figured with one full-time, officer and then like a small amount of reserves, is that correct?
I think so.
Yeah, it doesn't say how many reserves, but
It just, yeah, it just says the police wages, yeah.
plus that maintains the contract with that county,
Right, all the options, we've always had the contract with Benton County, it's just a matter of how many hours we decide. And then also, that would increase the Benton County contract if you stay with the policing, because then that brings back all the dispatch fees in addition to contracting with Benton County, in addition to having the police department. So then it goes back to the higher expenditures, which is where we get back to a number that's up over 200,000 again. And then I do have one more option. This was kind of a late option, but option 5, if we were to keep police the same, but take out the city administrator's health insurance. So you can see how that impacts 1430. So line item 31 would be the one that goes down, because that would be keep police the same, take out the city administrator's health insurance, And the property tax levy is at 14.04712. Does that one make sense? So there I left this piece the same for police, but took out all the health insurance for the city administrator. Which goes back to what Councilmember Light said, in the event that there is a special circumstance, that just means that the 22,000 comes from general fund reserve.
So, just for some context, with that option 5, nothing against offering insurance and having it being paid for, but that small adjustment on a $125,000 net tax per home, that's $35 basically annually. That's safe. Just as a context of what that looks like. Was there any, in the revised contract amount from Benton County, was there any increase in their dispatch fees?
He's getting back to me, so he just called me today. I asked him those questions. I would assume the answer to that is yes, and I only am saying that because the other contract was increasing. But he did not get back to me. So he actually wanted our contract for the past 3 years to take a look at when I was asking him more detailed questions. So I sent those back to him. It was this afternoon, because I think, were you in here when you called?
No.
Okay. So I sent him the last 3 years of the contract, and then we talked about that, and so I asked him, if we did that, I want to know dispatching fees, because I'm assuming those will increase, and then also with the new increases and what that would look like. So he said, can you send me what you previously had? And I said yes, because FY 23 and 24 that I sent him would both have had Benton County plus dispatch fees.
Now, if we, I know we're marching towards this March 5th date, and we agree tonight on whatever dollar or whatever it is,
Property tax levy is
and
what.
whatever we publish, we could come in under that still, yeah, right? We just can't exceed it.
Right, we can't exceed it.
Right, so, but if, right.
I'm leaning toward option 5, is where I'm at, I guess. I'm not quite ready to end the police department at this point.
Changing the way we deliver policing services.
Right. Right. It needs to be reworked at, obviously, we don't need someone to do it at 7 o'clock on Sunday mornings, but I think we could. I think it still should be here. In some form.
I think from a tax levy perspective and timing perspective, option 5 makes sense. Or even option 4, because to get the tax levy number out, what I'm hearing is we can get that out, the number out, and we can still work downward, we just can't go upward. So with option 5, does that take into account an increase with Benton County's contract? It does.
But remember, on the side of expenses, we can have, the best way to explain this is, you have one bucket. If we have $637,000 that's gonna come in from taxpayers, it's gonna come into one bucket. You can put the $207,000 toward policing services, or you can put that $200,000 toward streets activities, or parks, or any of those other things also. I believe that with the data that we've received from Benton County for the past 11 months, I feel as a city administrator, it is my duty to say that this is an extremely hard decision, and I understand that. Fiscally, keeping a budget that large, in my opinion as the financial officer here, it's not weighing itself out. And I have analyzed data from the 2023. I've been analyzing the data now from 2024. I understand this is a difficult decision, but when we even have Benton County telling us that they aren't increasing an officer here, it's not because they don't have the officer, it's because we don't have the crime and the need for it right now. And that's been demonstrated for 11 months. So I don't like to use the word eliminating the police department, because in my eyes, it's changing the way that we're delivering services, and it all comes from the same pot of money. That's why I wanted to demonstrate how it will directly impact our taxpayers, because the $637,000 is the same pot of money. So if we're gonna take those dollars and continue to spend $207,000 just toward policing, then that is what you decide as a council, but that's not what changes the property tax levy. So I just want you to be clear in what we understand as where we're going to put our expenses. The only thing now that's going to impact the levy is the FICA IPERS, the health insurance, other benefits, and the property liability. Because of last year's legislation, those are in the debt service levy, excuse me. Those are the only things that we can levy for. So we can spend all the money over here that we want. Problem is it's coming right out of our general fund. So I just wanted to make sure that I could demonstrate as much as I could put out on the table in the last 6 sessions that we've had. I don't have any more data to share. I feel like I was very open with the policing data that we have. I think that I tried to demonstrate it in as many possible ways as I could. I've shared the budget in many scenarios with the expenses. But if we're gonna keep even one police chief officer and run a budget of $207,000, I can't sit here and say that it's a fiscally good decision, because I haven't been able to make it make sense. It's still your decision, and I get it, it's a hard one.
People pay taxes for services though. That's the thing that I think we're kind of forgetting that. That's why the city exists. If they're gonna pay high taxes anyway, all they're getting is the street department and the city hall and the fire department. I think it's a draw, something that Centerpoint doesn't have, right? As a small town, it doesn't have to be 200,000. Like I said, I think you can rework it. It could be a one-man show, and you have
The 207 is the one-man show.
but you can cut down Benton County. They don't have to be here for 12 hours. We could cut it down to 6, right?
You can, but
You can, but that doesn't make sense, because we've never been a 24-hour service anyway. So the last place we would cut would be the people that are actually doing it all of those other hours. Where we have a huge expense, unless you guys decide you're going to start getting rid of maybe some of the property that goes with that, and maybe changing the schedule.
We do only need 2 cars, and Jeff and I tried to get 2 cars when we went to that. So, I just don't think it's, me personally, for $35 a year,
Well, that was only.
That's not,
Right, I understand, but the tax levy difference.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I can understand the case to move towards the policing fee with the county. I think it makes a lot of sense. I understand the concern of not having a police department here. You look at the coverage we had, the percentage of calls that were being spent on the interstate, the amount of hours in a given month that we didn't have a Urbana police officer working, 300 and some hours. So, I think there's some misconception about the coverage that we did have. I mean, obviously there was a significant portion, but the last 11 months of county coverage, to my knowledge, has been sufficient. I haven't had anybody call me directly and give me any negative feedback. I know I did talk to someone like last spring, and there was a concern of a response time with that. I haven't gotten any complaints to that effect. So I think, to Amanda's point, with respect to the timing of literally today, we're have an election of 2 open seats. I would hate to make a decision and not include those 2 council people in that going forward. I just don't think it's fair. Since we can make a decision and choose the one levy, or the one option that puts it basically at it is, or reduce the city administrator health insurance, and then whoever's elected gets on board and we have a crash course on what we're talking about here. I think that's fair to me personally. I don't want to try to make a decision right now and then be, oh, welcome aboard. So that's my opinion.
I mean, I came, like I said, I've only been on here a few months, kind of jumped right in, but came from something similar where the police department kind of combined with the government town. It was tough to start with. I understand it, I get it. But for me, just my background, I think it, if you're trying to grow and trying to get bigger, I think that presence does make a difference. Just my personal opinion on having some type of law enforcement. I think if you go with the city administrator, you're still knocking some off, but in the same aspect, if something happens, we're going right back to the beginning, right? We're going back to option 4 anyway. Option 5, I would say, I would lean towards that myself at this moment. So. But I think, Josh, I think you could take a look at it, in the future on what you actually need, because the data does not make sense to really keep it. I mean, let's be honest, that data does not prove that we need it. We did the same thing in another small town, but I think if you take a look at it and possibly look at what you actually need and maybe cut some of that. I know the 207 is, what we've got figured. But
I mean, you could even make the case that we could go to a part-time.
yes,
Part-time, you don't even need a
Something
full-time
like that.
chief. I mean,
yeah,
obviously Gary was a police chief up here for a lot of years under a part-time basis.
Yeah, I wouldn't accept a full-time position because I didn't want to take away from the job.
right. So, but I think.
But he's got to be certified.
Right.
He or she got to be certified.
I mean, at this moment, I would say option 5 would be my choice.
so option 5 is keep the police the same, but 0 levy for city administrator insurance.
Yeah, I mean, it's run that way. I mean, if there's something that happens that we need to provide that, we're just going right back up to the 1432, correct?
Well, you would have,
You just pull it out.
You would just.
You have-
You just pull it out of the general fund, but yes, I mean, it's something you don't wanna do, you know, because that general fund, I mean,
And essentially, you're doing it 1 year, and then from there, you're just writing out your
I mean,
budget.
I mean, the legislation.
So if we were to do
legislation
something like
810
that,
810 format,
I feel
so
like we
that's
should
common,
stick with
one way or
it.
another.
the option 4 and then go down from there.
oh,
Do you see what I mean? I
Yeah,
think
we
that
don't
if we're
have to
gonna
set a
do
final
something
budget.
like that,
yeah, that's.
I feel like then we need to probably, it only makes sense to stay
Stay with
at
four.
option 4, which is the same that it's been for FY 24-25. Because like you said before, when we go back to this and we decide to cut even, more or however you guys maneuver the numbers,
Mhm.
then we could still end up at the 14.04712. But just to stay safe, do we keep it the same then?
I think that's fine.
Yeah, I say you go that route then, start with.
So, I mean,
I'll make a motion to, do about this more. Keep everything the same.
So property tax levy at 14.32654.
a second.
Been moved and seconded to, go option 4 on this, property tax levy. Will we vote? Councilperson Baskey?
Yes.
Councilperson Holhouse?
Yes.
Councilperson Bendel?
Yes.
Councilperson, Light?
Yes.
Okay, before somebody motions to adjourn, we have our next meeting on March 12th. Is there anything in the meantime that you would like me to specifically work on? I know I still need to get finalized numbers from Benton County, and that would include not only the contract, but also dispatch fees.
I'd like to add on the agenda, and I think I mentioned, but so the council knows to look at these, speed zone signs.
Oh, yeah.
With this approach, we did have it could have been a very serious accident on the east side of town where the vehicle committed at a very high rate of speed. It hit a car and then pushed it through and went through the front of the garage and out to the back of the garage.
And you're talking about the corner by the Urbana Christian Church, which is one of the areas where we explored the war speed sign. Okay.
Did we have budget? Yeah, we had budget for that. Why
Yep,
can't
we
we just
did.
pull the trigger on
We
it?
did.
But, Darren, we talked about Sunset, and if we could add another one, I think another widest one would be on the south edge of town, on 32nd Avenue, coming into town.
I believe we budgeted $8,000 to $10,000 for, at the time, we were saying one, which would be over at the Urbana Christian Church. If we can get two at a better price, the other one was Sunset, I believe. Do you want me to go, since those were already budgeted and we had that conversation, do you want me to go get final pricing on those?
Sure.
Okay.
Maybe what I got there, you to the building inspector.
I'm sorry, what was
To
that?
the building inspector. You already got that.
Oh, for,
The next meeting, last one.
yes, the job description and everything for the next meeting, yes, I did write that down, thank you for the reminder.
Please make the motion.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
A second.
Been moved and seconded to adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign.